Okay. It is May the 7th. It's 6 o'clock, and this is our general government meeting for the city of Canyon City. And Cindy, would you mind calling the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Dennehy. Absent. Councilmember Maloney.
Here.
Councilmember Schmischer.
Here.
Councilmember Stein.
Here.
Councilmember Tracy.
Here.
Councilmember Worthington.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick. Absent. Mayor Troutman.
Here. Thank you, Cindy. So we'll go forward, and we'd ask, this evening we're going to talk about the 2A Street Initiative, and we'd have our city engineer, our esteemed city engineer, Leo. Would you like to go forward?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of council. Tonight we're going to cover our 2A Streets annual updates a little bit earlier than we've done this the past couple of years, but got a few different things that we want to make sure we talk about and give ourselves plenty of time to get out in front of. So kind of looking backwards, the map doesn't show up the best print version. The digital version looks a little better. Completed so far to date, we're over $25 million of improvements and 17 miles of roadway. This year, currently under or planned for construction, we have about $5.3 million planned. That totals about 2.25 miles of roadway. And the map is there, but we'll get into the details a little later on what all those segments are that are up this year. So here is our 2025 program. Main Street, first and foremost, is being funded partially with 2A dollars. It's also partially funded with a CDOT grant for revitalizing Main Street, currently under construction. The next project on the list is Justice Center. That's Justice Center Boulevard from Highway 50 to Grandview. That is currently out for bids. It was just published for bids on Monday, and we are looking towards bringing a recommendation to council at the June 16th meeting after we open bids on that. Third project on the list is our street resurfacing project, which includes 3 segments that are proposed for 2A funding this year, which is Fields from Fremont Drive to Pear, Cottonwood from US 50 south to Fowler, and Mackenzie from US 50 south to the city limits. That project also includes one segment of general fund street resurfacing dollars, which is a part of the same project and same bid package, but funded with different monies, as well as the resurfacing or surfacing of the New Method parking lot on Main Street. And we opened bids on that a couple weeks ago, and we will be looking forward to bringing a recommendation to council at the May 19th meeting for award of that project. Last two are technically one combined project that is still in design, and that is on 12th and Sherman down in the towards the Lincoln Park area in the southern part of Canyon. And again, those are still in design. We would hope to potentially bring those for bids later this summer, but that'll be something that we'll have to discuss a little later. Our 2026 plan right now is all of the drinking water revolving fund projects that we've talked about several times. These are some massive projects, total over $23 million in total construction costs, with about $17.7 million of 2A funding, drinking water revolving fund, and smaller pieces of stormwater funding and potential general fund dollars tied to the replacement of the ditch crossing on 9th Street right there by Washington Elementary. That's traditionally been a general fund expense for the city. In total, those come out to 2.8 road miles, so a lot of money for a very short amount of mileage. The last time we talked in August of 2024, we had very preliminary estimates for these based on just a scoping level estimate. We've got the design progressed a ways, and the design has showed that these projects are coming in quite a bit higher than we planned, and it's going to require us to make some decisions on how we want to move forward. So I kind of went over those. Yes.
Ask a question on that? Sorry, Preston, I don't think you can see hands with the PowerPoint up. Could I ask, and you may be getting into this, as to why, like what about the design has caused the price to go up that much higher?
Yeah, certainly. Some of it's construction inflation beyond what we anticipate. We kind of budget 3% a year. It's been a little higher than that a couple of the years. Some of these, we do comparisons based on similar projects that we've bid and scoped. Some of these are just requiring a little more work based on poor soil conditions that we didn't know at the scoping stage, that we find out once we get to design. Griffin is a great example of one that Griffin is a very good project. One of the biggest issues we have on Griffin is that with no curb and gutter, everything currently drains into the irrigation laterals on that street. And to fix that, we have to install a storm sewer system. And we budgeted some for that based on some historical costs, but that part of the project has just ballooned probably threefold what we expected it to be to get a storm sewer in that can handle that water and get it outletted somewhere.
Thank you. That's really helpful, Leo.
Yep, and just to kind of put a summary on that, when we talked in August 2024, we had penciled these projects at roughly $10 million of 2A funds. And you can see on this slide, right now we're at just about 18 million or 17.75 million dollars. So they've all inflated a little bit. I would say Griffin is the one that's probably taken the most beating. It is a very challenging project. And we've just gotten I take that back. We've gotten most of these updated cost estimates and plans just in the last 1 to 2 weeks. So we as staff have not had a lot of time to really dig into them yet and just do a quick double check, make sure there's no busts or anything that are out of line with these projects that we can try to scale back. Looking at the finances of the 2A fund, we won't read those out verbatim. We kind of project that based on the cash we have coming into 2025, the revenue we'll collect in 2025 and 26, we have just shy of $20 million available. The full program between everything for 2025 and 2026 is looking like it's going to be about $24.5 million with those cost escalations, which leaves us about $4.7 million short of 2A funds to do everything on the list, if those numbers are all accurate. Staff put together some options amongst the projects that are still not been awarded or not recommended. I won't read through all of these, but we still have 3 projects in 2025 that have not been awarded. I mentioned that the resurfacing project will be coming to council at the May 19th meeting, and Justice Center will be about a month behind at the June 16th meeting. In terms of these, staff would recommend potentially switching one of the resurfacing segments from 2A funded to general fund. That would be Cottonwood Avenue. It's currently classified as a local street, South Cottonwood from US 50 to Fowler. Moving that from 2A funded to general fund dollars would save a little bit of money. The general fund has a current budget of around $550,000 for street resurfacing, and by incorporating that, it would put that up to $375,000. But I also note that the general fund is the one that's been seeing the biggest decrease in revenue from sales tax. So we kind of had a desire to probably not push that all the way up against the $550,000 that's budgeted. Justice Center is one that we as staff would like to keep. We feel that's an important project for the community. That is currently classified as a local. I do make that note. That is based on the 1996 major thoroughfare plan, and that is probably not accurate in today's terms, but for consistency's sake, we are using that document as our baseline. Lastly, staff would recommend that we probably defer the 12th and Sherman project until we have bid out and potentially awarded some of our higher priority projects. That project right now is estimated at just over $1 million of 2A cost. Those 2 small changes to the 2025 program would potentially result in just about $1.1 million in savings of the 2A fund. 2026 gets a lot more challenging. So we have 5 separate projects that are all kind of on the same track to be ready for bidding. We have two projects on 9th Street because one of them includes drinking water revolving fund dollars for the southern piece from Mystic to Meadows, and one of them does not include drinking water revolving fund dollars, which would be the north piece from Meadows up to Canyon Exploratory School on Washington Street. I will say those two projects are relatively close to what we anticipated. We budgeted around $250 a square yard based on how much pavement is going in. Those two came in at about $310 and $350. The southern project, I'll note that most of that increase is related to having to replace the hydraulic ditch crossing, which we didn't initially anticipate, but after doing the design work and a deeper investigation of its condition, it's probably a prudent investment to do that now while the street gets done. College Avenue, similarly, is around $275 a square yard for pavement costs, which is pretty close to what we estimated, just a touch up. As I mentioned, Griffin Avenue is one that really kind of has escalated on us. You know, to do that project, we're going to spend about $680 for every square yard of asphalt that gets placed on that road. And as I mentioned, a lot of that is driven by the fact of upgrading that road and adding curb and gutter requires a storm sewer system. The project contains a railroad crossing that we had hoped to abandon, but the railroad has said they're not open to that quite yet, although it is on their radar for further out. We do also come into needing to pipe several irrigation ditches along Griffin Avenue. And one of the requests or discussions earlier was to do a full sidewalk replacement on that street, which is also kind of hitting some of our costs a little harder than we had initially scoped. I think
Leo?
I see a hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Emily. Thanks. Could I ask about College Avenue? And I may not be remembering correctly, but I thought when we talked about college last year that we had it on the 2025 list for reconstruction. And so I wasn't sure if that got bumped for financial reasons or other reasons, or if I am just not remembering correctly.
No, you're correct. It's mostly tied to the fact that it's taken us a while longer to get through the drinking water revolving fund process and get those funds secured, so that we likely wouldn't have everything in that program ready until August or September anyways, is my guess.
Right. I mean, the main reason I bring it up is that it, particularly in front of a high school, it's in terrible shape. You probably know that. There's been some patching of potholes, but I don't know if the patches aren't holding or if it's just new potholes, but it's really in terrible shape. And if we're not going to get to reconstruction until sometime next year on College, we may need to think of some kind of short-term solution there. I mean, and especially with the traffic calming devices in place there now, the concrete blocks, there literally is less room to drive around the potholes, and they're big and deep. So if you haven't driven on that recently, I drive it pretty often. I drove it earlier today, and I just want to be sure that we think about what we can do to make that a little bit more livable, because of all the school traffic and other traffic that uses that route.
Yeah, we can certainly take a look at that. The moisture and the rain really drives our potholes up quite a bit, so we'll be doing some major pothole work in the next couple weeks. I know that the school did have a patch there, right near 13th Street is where they brought their new water service into the building, and that stayed gravel a little bit longer than we would have liked, but I do believe that got patched right at the end of last week, I want to say, or maybe the first part of this week.
Yeah.
So that has helped some, but I do agree. The rest of the roads in not
It's a
great condition
mess.
either.
There's multiple holes, and the whatever work that has been done. And I don't know if equipment, trucks or whatever are adding to the problem through there since all that construction's going on. I don't know, but I would just like us to take a close look at that stretch. It's really hard to drive now. I'll just leave it at that.
Some of the other considerations for College, the current construction project going on at the high school, the potential for the pool construction project as well. We don't necessarily want to put down a whole bunch of new asphalt so.
Right.
Those from a timing standpoint, we just might want to make sure that we're timing it right.
Yep. Last one on this list is one that's,
Yeah, I agree. So, just wanted to say that, and it,
uh-oh. We lost you a little bit there.
some kind of a term, figure out some work on that.
Okay. Last project on our 2026 list is Harding Avenue, which is one that's been on for a while. That one kind of is also coming in pretty close to where we expected, a little bit higher. Like I said, all of them are a little higher, Griffin kind of being the one that really escalated on us quite a bit. With that, I think, one of the staff recommendations would potentially be to slow down work on Griffin and give us some more time to try to value engineering that project down a little bit in cost, make sure we understand those costs, make sure we understand the risks and have a good position with the railroad so we're not leaving ourselves in a position like we have on East Main and Rhodes where we're stuck in a railroad issue. I don't think this one will be nearly as bad. It's certainly not a main spur line of the railroad. But if that is the direction, deferring Griffin, we may still have to look at doing the drinking water and the water main work at this time just to satisfy our DWRF requirements and get that done ahead of time, which would be possible to do. Those funds wouldn't necessarily impact the 2A dollars. And if we did defer the road and storm work until we had a better plan or we had additional funding for it, that could result in around $4 million of savings to the fund. So this kind of how staff looked at it and one of the plans that we came up with of how to try to get this back into our budget and back into something that we can move forward yet with this year and next year. But we're certainly open to other options, tonight or even if everybody wants to think on it a while and get back to us. None of these are certainly immediately pressing decisions. The next thing that will really come before us is the May 19th decision on the resurfacing project and if and how we want to award that contract. So that
Again, just jumping in because I don't think hands can be seen. I just wanted to echo some of Councilwoman Tracy's comments on Griffin. I think it's definitely in need of work and pretty urgently, but do really value and appreciate your comments, Leo, on the desire to value engineer it and make sure that we have all of those ducks kind of in a row with the railroad crossing. And as long as it's on the agenda for 2027 and kind of we use this time period to make sure that we are getting those ducks in a row, I think that could actually leave us in a better position in the long term. And certainly North 9th obviously has to be a huge priority, but also echo Ryan and Emily's comments on college and kind of sequencing that correctly with what happens or depending on what happens this November in that election. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's it for the bad news, so I don't need an answer on anybody today right away at this time, but if anybody else has any comments or wants to let me know, I think my email is on the front of this presentation and Christy will have it online later today if it isn't already. So looking at the good side of things, this program has been hugely transformational for Canyon, as I'm sure you all that have lived here through the entirety of it know. By the time we're done in 2026 with the current collection, we'll have invested more than $40 million and done 22 miles of street improvements. The part I like to focus on, we just had a contract to have somebody go out and re-rate all our roads, and the map you see on the right is the preliminary data. They're not all the way done processing yet, so I can't give final numbers. But in 2016, before we started this program, the average pavement condition index for Canyon City, which is a 0 to 100 scale, 100 being great pavement, 0 being totally failed, our average was a 36.2. The preliminary data we have is trending that will be in the upper 50s at the end of 2020, we'll be in the upper 50s at the 2025 and probably in the low 60s by 2026 with those additional projects done. For a little bit of benchmark, a lot of communities target to be at or above 70 for a PCI, so we've made tremendous progress in this program through the 10 years that we've had it. And then I do just, make the note that we will have that 10-year plan that goes along with these updated ratings will be available and presented to council probably June or July of 2025 this year. So we really hope to have that done this summer and set us on a good trajectory going forward. The big question will be, a ballot proposal and pursuing a renewal of the 2A program. We do collect through the end of 2026, so there is still a year and a half of sales tax collection for this program. I think one of the things we'd like to discuss is potential to put this on the November 2025 ballot, and what that looks like on the November 2025 ballot. So to make the November 2025 ballot, we've got until August to have our ballot language finalized and adopted, so we have some time. I've included the ballot language that was approved by the voters in 2016 on the right. I think, from a staff perspective, we're pretty comfortable working within that ballot language. The 10-year plan is set up that it will evaluate options of that program and that funding continuing at the same level or that funding being non-existent. And then we can do some interpolation in between there if there's a desire to look at a different number for that. One of the other things we run into sometimes is certain elements of need are not eligible for funding with this program, which is why we had to go to the Drinking Water Revolving Fund to get the water main done. We can't pay for water utility with this source of revenue. So that burdens our enterprise fund, just requires us to be more creative and delays projects longer than we want sometimes. Those projects will all be federalized. There's a number of things that come along with not being able to use those funds for broader purposes. But that can also complicate the ballot language, and maybe that isn't something we want to entertain. If we want to keep this simple and clean, and we're just asking for a renewal and a continuation of the same thing, I think that's certainly an option we're open to as well.
Okay, are there any questions of Leo? We're down to probably looking at the verbiage on what we presented to the voters.
Yeah.
And whether we would want to change that. You have some notes here on the side. Keep existing language change. Are there any counselors that would like to comment on that?
I will.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I kind of like the idea if there's a way to simply put it in there as far as giving some of this tax dollars towards water, or curb and gutter seemed to be one of those that was an issue that is not definitive. And so I was wondering, it seems to me as if it would be, I think of curb and gutter being part of the paving and doing streets. So to me, I think it would be smart to at least include that portion of it so that that's clear.
I think what we've received from interpretation from both the city attorney and the auditor that audits the 2A funds is that curb and gutter is part of street infrastructure, and we have been including it.
Okay, good.
On the question about water, that one's a little bit more nuanced. Because the water fund is an enterprise fund, we can't commingle with the sales tax funds.
Yeah, ballot issues. Yeah.
Okay. Emily, I see a yellow hand there.
Yeah, thanks. I think it makes sense, first of all, to, yes, put something on the ballot in November. We'd obviously need just a little wording change in regard where it says changing it by 1% from 2 to 3%. We have a slightly different tax rate right now on our sales tax, so it's just a wording change that would be needed there. I think the 1% still makes sense. The 10 years probably still makes sense. But if there's some way to put in a little bit more flexibility regarding what the funds can be used for, that might be good. I just don't know what that wording would need to be. And it doesn't mean that we would always choose to use it more flexibly. And, we have the advantage of having these public meetings all the time, every time we review what we're doing with the 2A funds and decide how to prioritize streets and so forth. We're always providing input, and the public too, of course, can provide input in the same way. But if there is a way to add a little bit more flexibility in there, that would be good. And that's all I have at this point.
I think Amy also has her
Amy?
hand up.
Yes.
Thanks, Preston. I would agree with Councilmember Worthington with regard to wanting to be able to see more work done on the underlying infrastructure of the streets, and would like to have more information from our attorneys about how we could potentially do that. Obviously, don't want to commingle funds that we aren't allowed, but also would like a lot more clarity on what those possibilities are. I also would like us to be able to both repair sidewalks and create new sidewalks with these funds. I want to make sure that the language is still really tight and really specific to streets and to the things that naturally go along with streets. I wouldn't want it to be read in such a way that it could be more flexible than that. But do think that we've learned from these from this first tranche of funds, and would want to make sure that we are incorporating those lessons learned in terms of some of the barriers that we've had to being able to pursue those projects that would most benefit and improve the quality of life of our citizens. So I would like to request that our attorneys provide us some greater clarity on what is possible with regard to the underlying infrastructure, and would also like to see some draft ballot language from them that kind of puts that as simply as possible, but that covers all manner of sidewalks and underlying infrastructure. And
I think we lost her.
It's been a day.
Yeah, you used up your 400 words. Sorry. Emily, I think you're there. Was that you or was that Amy?
That was Amy.
And Andrea, did you have anything?
Andrea?
I think they've muted me, which is a common thing even at home. Okay, I do have a bit of a problem adding more things that we could do. I don't know what that would be. I'm not crazy about adding the cost of sidewalks because it could be horrendous. And I think the citizens want the streets. The sidewalks might be a distant second. That's just my opinion. I don't know what else you would include. If we can include curbing and paving, and structurally, because of the soils and everything else, we're running up a bill. And now asking to do a sidewalk. I'm not sure I'd be crazy about that. What else would you add in there, Leo? Or
To Amy's point, I think maybe there's a way to incorporate language that the funds can be used to support enterprise fund expenses that are associated with the street-related improvements, so that it could support water infrastructure needs or stormwater infrastructure needs that are related to the street, but not something that a street could typically pay for, or that you'd be able to pay for under the current language. That's just the top of my head.
Yeah, I always have a concern about, well, this council, I think, is prudent and thoughtful. I'm not smearing future councils, but that's always a possibility that might preclude in the future getting it renewed, which probably will have to be renewed one more time at least. It might be an ongoing tax. Concerns me a little bit, not a lot, but anyway, any other comments? Any hands I see up there?
I have another question. It's not so much on the ballot, but have any of the costs, and since we are down on sales tax right now, unless we're really lucky with the great tourist season or something, have anything been included in your estimates and so forth to anticipate a down year?
We anticipate our revenue a little bit less than what it has been historically. I want to say I was down about 10% over what had been collected in 2024 is kind of what I projected for 2025 and 2026.
The fund also has some reserves in it, so it doesn't necessarily affect the programs for the streets that were set up for this year's program, but it will shortchange us at the end of the project. Yeah. If we could get a little bit of feedback from council, typically when, ballot questions go up, similar to like the rec district, are you interested in getting polling numbers or hiring a firm to do some polling on putting this on the ballot and getting, feedback from voters before we do it? Or do you want to shoot from the hip, I guess?
I think the important part here is that it doesn't look like a new tax, so how that ballot is going to be worded is very important right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we substantially keep it the way it is, I wouldn't want to go to the extra expenditure. I don't know what that number is, but if we keep
It'd probably be somewhere in the, I'd say probably $12,000 to $15,000 range to do some polling.
Yeah, again, if we keep it very similar to this, I feel that the public is happy with the program that's going on, and maybe we don't need to spend that money, unless you want to put it in the mayor's salary.
Would it read similar about the way it reads, saying increased by 3.5 million? Or would it read in the first line be an extension of an existing tax,
It
not
would
an increase?
It'd probably be something along the lines of, shall the city of Canyon City retain this tax for a period of 10 years? Something along those lines. We would work with the attorneys, and if we went and did polling, we would do it with a question that is going to be worded similar to what would go on the November ballot. It would not be this.
Emily, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just on that topic, I wonder if instead of polling, if we could just do several open house type events, or maybe just think about ways to do some in-person kinds of things and gather feedback that way. I'm not opposed to polling, but it is an expense more than an open house or several of those might be. Just a thought.
It is. The one positive thing that I think you get with these polling companies is they reach out to the likely voters, and you don't necessarily have an not adverse, but the results aren't necessarily skewed based off of who shows up to the meeting. You're getting a more representative outlook based off of the voting. They're mostly done through text and cell phone contexts for polling these days.
I wouldn't think both would, again, I know we've done this in the past, but again, to toot our own horn in the sense of showing the streets that have been improved, show just how far the money has gone. I don't think it would hurt to have an open house, to have those pictures up again, just to show it. And as far as then, we all hate to spend the extra money, but I think the polling would be more objective and give us a better feel that way. But I think hand in hand would not be a bad idea.
Yeah, and I think absolutely, open houses and public engagement are going to be key as we move through this process, and those are absolutely on the docket.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next steps. When you go to next steps, would you like to discuss that next, or we kind of thrashed that far enough? We have it today, and
Can you slide it? I think there's just one more slide.
Oh, it looks like we got Amy back.
oh, Amy?
Hey, sorry, yeah, I think the connection is not great. Just wanted to echo the doing open houses and trying to get that word out. I think that's a really good idea. I think also citizen committees have been really helpful in terms of spreading the word and making sure that those likely voters are aware and eager to participate. It sounds like there may be a desire from council to maybe see two options from our attorneys, one that does have a little bit more flexibility, and then one that is is largely the same. So would just want to make sure that we, that we have the ability to kind of have that conversation, maybe with the language in front of us. I do think that, North 9th, I think, is a great example where folks have really, really wanted to see that street improved for a long time. And it wasn't feasible earlier in the 2A project because of the challenges with the underlying infrastructure. So, thanks.
All right. So last slide for tonight. Today, I really kind of wanted to present you the staff option for what we want to look at the rest of this year and next year, and get the ballot language out and kind of get some direction on that. I do hear what you all are saying, and we will work with the attorneys and kind of bring back two versions of that ballot language in the future. One that largely maintains the status quo and one that looks at alternative uses of that funds to meet broader needs. So we'll probably target to have that back within that 3 to 6 month window. As I mentioned earlier, we'll have to have a decision on the ballot language by, is it the first meeting in August, Brian, or second? One of the meetings in August, either way.
It will have to be probably the first meeting because we'll need 2 readings, and then
Okay.
it has to be set and sent over to the county by the first week in September.
Okay. So the other things we've got going on these projects is we've made it through the 2 ordinance readings for the loans on the water main. We'll have our 30-day referendum period for that, and then we'll be back likely in June to discuss the actual agreement that was attached to those loans in the previous 2 iterations. We'll have to bid our 2026 projects at some point in the future, which is all of those drinking water fund projects. We can't do that until the agreement's done, so that's probably late summer, early fall timeframe to bid any of that work. And then I think one of the other things I just want to hit on again is that we will have our 10-year plan finalized and available probably in late June or early July, which will go along nicely with the ballot language discussion and help advise those decisions and just be good information to share at those public open houses to kind of show the whole story of what we've done in the last 10 years and what the next 10 years could look like in a couple different scenarios. So, if
Okay.
no one has anything else, I think that's
That's
all
it.
I have for today.
Any more questions of Leo or Ryan or concerns? I guess we're heading towards adjournment. Is that?
Amy
Just
might have her hand up.
Oh.
just one additional from me. I'm sure this goes without saying, but I think it would be great to have at least one of those public open houses before the next meeting that we discuss the potential ballot language at, so that we can hear from the public about kind of what some of the options are and solicit some of that feedback. Thanks.
Okay. I guess we had to, what month would that be? July? June?
If it's just a ballot language consideration, I think we could do something probably in June, I would guess. Depending, we'd have to see when the attorneys could get us drafts of things. We wouldn't have the 10-year plan until the end of June, July, so I wouldn't be able to necessarily share full details of that part of it. What would we do if this got approved, or what would we do if it didn't get approved, and answer that question. That's the question I won't be able to really cover probably until July. So, and that maybe is a little tighter than we want.
Yeah, we have council work session coming up at the end of May. We may revisit some of these questions with the attorney in the room and maybe have some mock-ups of what some of that ballot language would look like, and before that, just to help give staff a little bit more direction as we move forward through that.
Yeah, what I think might be a good thing to have that verbiage and the plan all at one session instead of doing both. I would think that would be a little better for the public. They do it all at one time. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So that would probably dictate June into July, something like that.
I would think so, yeah.
Okay.
Around
But prior to
July.
that, we would have preliminaries to come to council so we could sort of critique that and then put it on, so we'd have the plan and the verbiage together.
Yeah, I think, I think what I'm saying is, at the work session, try to get some of these questions answered.
Okay.
Here in a couple
Got it.
weeks, and, that can help,
Okay.
provide some additional direction.
Okay, that's great. Amy, did you want,
That sounds wonderful. Thank you.
so, okay. We're moving toward adjournment. We're adjourned then. Okay, thank you.